The black diamond in the pocket. On what the dead leave behind. A widow on the morning after her husband's funeral was sorting his clothes. She was 58. Her husband had been 61. They had been married for 36 years. He had died of a small heart attack in the late afternoon of a Wednesday in October while sitting in his armchair with a book open on his lap. The book had remained open on the floor for several hours after his death until the doctor had come. She had told herself she would do it slowly. She had told herself she would not cry. She had told herself many things in the days since the funeral that had not, in the event, held. She had cried at the funeral. She had cried last night when she had eaten her dinner alone for the first time in 36 years. She had cried this morning when she had reached for his hand across the empty bed. She was crying now in the small dressing room with his coats around her. She had begun with his coats because she had thought the coats would be the easiest. They were the most external of his clothes. They were the things he wore over everything else, the things that came off first when he came home and were the last to go on when he left. They were also, in some sense, the most public. They were the version of him that the village had seen. She had thought she could sort the coats without weeping. She had been wrong. She had wept at the first coat, his fine winter coat with the velvet collar. She had wept at the second, his everyday work coat, with the small ink stain on the cuff that he had not, in 12 years, managed to remove. The third coat was older. It was his oldest, in fact, the one he had been wearing when she met him, when they had both been 22 at a small concert in a town neither of them had lived in. It was a coat of dark blue wool, with brass buttons, with a lining of silk that had, over 36 years, mostly worn through. He had not worn it in 20 years. She had asked him several times over the years why he kept it. He had not answered on most of those occasions with any particular precision. He had said vaguely that it had been a good coat. He had said it had cost him most of his first month's wages. He had said it was the coat he had worn when they met. None of these reasons had been, in her view, sufficient to keep a coat one no longer wore, but she had not, in the end, pressed. The coat had hung in the small dressing room for 20 years, between his everyday coats, untouched. She took it down. She held it. She had not, in 20 years, held it. The wool was softer than she remembered. The smell of it was different from the smell of his other coats. It had been hanging undisturbed for so long that it had absorbed only the smell of the cedar of the dressing room, with no recent smell of him on it. It smelled, somehow, of their first meeting, though their first meeting had not had any particular smell. The smell was, perhaps, only an association in her own mind brought up by the coat. She put her hand in the pocket. She had not, in any year of their marriage, put her hand in this pocket. She had not thought of the pocket. She had assumed in her 36 years that the pocket of a coat unworn for 20 years would contain nothing. There was a stone in it. She drew it out. It was a black diamond, the size of her thumb, faceted, very heavy. She had never seen it. It had not been in his pocket in life. She would have known. She had emptied his pockets regularly when she had brushed his coats. She had emptied this coat too the last time he had worn it 20 years before. She had taken out on that occasion only the small things he had carried, a handkerchief, a few coins, a button he had been meaning to sew back on. There had been no stone. It was there now. She held it to the window. The morning light did not pass through it. This was the first thing she noticed. Diamonds, she knew, transmitted light. Light entered them and was refracted by the facets and emerged in the small rainbow scatterings the village's jeweler had once shown her. This diamond did not refract the light. The light entered the diamond and was somehow consumed. The diamond was not, on her holding it to the light, a pale, sparkling thing. It was a dark stone, faceted, that absorbed every photon that came near it. She looked into it. Her eye, looking into a faceted stone, expected reflections, small images of the room behind her, multiplied across the facets. There were no reflections. There was, in each facet, only the depth of the diamond's interior, a depth that was, somehow, deeper than the diamond's outer dimensions could have contained. "What are you?" she said. She was alone in the dressing room. She had not in her life asked an object what it was. She had also, until this morning, never expected one to answer. The diamond answered. "I am the thing he could not say," said the diamond. Its voice was quiet. It came from inside the diamond, very faintly, as if from a great depth. "Every man carries one. Most do not know they are carrying. Yours did not know. He carried me for 40 years. The carrying was the marriage. The carrying was also the silence between you. He died without saying me. He could not have said me. I am not a kind of thing that words reach." She sat down on the small bench in the dressing room. 40 years, she said. "Yes, he carried me from the time he was 21. He acquired me in some manner that you would not understand in the last year before he met you. He had been in that year undergoing a particular kind of suffering. I will not name it, because it was, in his life, the thing he could not name, and naming it now would be a betrayal of the long carrying. He came out of that year carrying me. He met you 2 months later at the concert. He was, when he met you, already a man with me in his pocket. He never showed me. He could not. The showing would have required a kind of speech he did not, in his lifetime, develop. He was a man of many speeches. He could speak about politics, about his work, about the weather, about the village's various scandals. He could not speak about me. The marriage for him was a way of living a life around me without ever having to point at me. The silence between you, the silence that you sometimes felt and sometimes did not feel, was the space I occupied. You felt it. You did not know in any precise way what it was. She held the diamond in her 2 hands. "Was it bad?" she said. "The thing he could not say." It was not in itself bad. It was a kind of grief. The grief was for something he had lost before he met you, that he had decided not to grieve openly because he did not want to bring grief into your marriage. The decision was, in some sense, kind. It was also, in some sense, unkind to him mostly, and to the grief itself, which was not in the way of griefs lessened by being kept silent. The grief had to live somewhere. It lived in me. I am, in my diamond form, the compressed and faceted shape of his unspoken grief, polished over 40 years by being carried in a coat pocket. "What do I do with you?" The diamond was, for a moment, silent. "I am yours now," it said. "Mine, he has died. The carrying must, by the customs of this country, be passed on. I cannot, by my nature, be left in the coat. The coat, after some years, will be sold or given to charity. I would be lost. The carrying would be incomplete. He passed me to you by leaving me in the pocket of the coat he knew you would, in time, examine. The passing was, in some sense, his final act. It was not, in his last hour, conscious. He did not, on the afternoon of his death, think about the coat. But the passing was prepared in some part of him throughout the marriage. He had been preparing you by certain small silences and certain small kindnesses to be ready to receive me. You are ready, I am yours." She turned the diamond in her hand. "Do not try to make me bright," said the diamond. "Many of the people who inherit such diamonds attempt this. They have the diamond cut by a jeweler. They have it polished. They have it set in a piece of jewelry. The cutting destroys me. The diamond, properly cut, would refract light. I would no longer absorb. I would become, in the cutting, a small bright stone like any other. I would no longer be what I am. The widow who has me cut loses, in the cutting, the carrying that her husband performed for 40 years. The carrying, when lost, is not in this world recoverable. The grief, when freed, becomes again the grief it was at 21, sharp, unmanageable. The widow finds she cannot bear it. She has, in some cases, taken her own life." She nodded. "Do not try to set me in a ring," said the diamond. "The ring is not my shape. The ring is a public form. I am, in my nature, private form. The ring would expose me to other people. The exposure would dilute me. I would, in time, become a small dark stone in a ring, and the ring would be admired at parties, and the grief inside me would, over the years, leak out and contaminate the people around you. You do not, I think, want this. Do not show me to anyone. I will not. Carry me. I will weigh a great deal at first. The weight will diminish. By the time you die, I will weigh nothing. You will not have understood me. That is not the work. The work is to carry me. The carrying is, in some sense, the continuation of the marriage. He carried me for 40 years. You will carry me for some years, perhaps 20, perhaps 30. Then I will pass to your daughter or to whichever of your descendants is ready. The carrying continues in the family. We do not, in any precise way, end." She put the diamond in her own pocket. she did not that morning finish sorting the coats. She closed the dressing room door. She walked to the kitchen. She made tea. She sat with the tea with her hand in her pocket on the diamond. The diamond was at first very heavy. She felt it in her shoulder, in her hip, in the way her clothes hung on her right side. She walked in the first weeks with a slight tilt. She did not in those weeks tell anyone what she was carrying. Her daughter, who came to visit, asked her if she had hurt her back. She said only that she was adjusting. The weight diminished, as the diamond had said. By the end of the first year, she could carry the diamond without the tilt. By the end of the 5th year, she barely noticed it. By the end of the 10th, the diamond weighed in her pocket perhaps the weight of an ordinary stone of its size. She carried it for the rest of her life. She lived to be 83. She did not, in her remaining years, marry again. She did not, in those years, take a lover. She was, in some sense, still in her marriage. The marriage had not ended at her husband's death. The marriage continued through the carrying. She was company to herself in the way her husband had been company. She had, in some sense, become him, or more accurately, she had received into herself the silence he had been managing for both of them. She died in her bed. Her daughter, who was by then 55, was beside her. She had been close to her mother in the long years. She had not, in those years, been told about the diamond. She had only known that her mother carried, in the right pocket of her coat, something she did not take out. After her mother's death, her daughter found the diamond in the pocket of her mother's coat. She put her hand in the pocket. She drew it out. She held it to the light. The light was consumed. The diamond spoke. I am the thing she could not say, it said. Carry me. The daughter carried it. She did not know in any precise way that it was the same diamond. She had not been told. The diamond did not, on her receiving it, explain its history. It explained only that it was hers now, that it should not be cut, that it should not be set in a ring, that it should not be shown to anyone, and that she should carry it. The daughter carried it for the rest of her own life. She passed it in her own time to her own son. The diamond is, in some province, still being carried. It has by now passed through 6 generations of the family. It is, in each generation, a slightly different diamond. It absorbs, in each carrying, a particular quality of the carrier's own silences, which it adds somehow to its faceted body. It has been in some sense growing, but it is also somehow the same diamond. It is the family's accumulated unsayable. It is the price the family has paid for being able to live ordinary lives. It is the carrying that has made the ordinary lives possible. It will, in time, in some generation, be lost. The diamonds, in their long histories, eventually are. The losing is not in the families that have lost them, immediately catastrophic. The losing only means that, in the generation of the losing, the unsayable is no longer held. It floats free. It must be reacquired by the next generation's first carrier in some private encounter with grief. The cycle continues. The diamonds in their pockets continue. The dead leave a black diamond in the coat. It cannot be made bright. It cannot be set in a ring. The work is to carry it. The carrying lightens it. By the time you die, it weighs nothing. Then it is passed on. The diamond is the unsayable. Every man carries one. Most do not know. The widow who tries to cut it loses. In the cutting, the carrying her husband performed for 40 years, the grief, when freed, is unmanageable. The work is to carry. The diamond is, in some sense, the continuation of the marriage. It passes in the family generation to generation. It will, in time, be lost. The next first carrier will, in private encounter with grief, acquire another. Legs. Tales of the Midnight Sun.